Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here at episode 120, we have joining us Dan Gage. He's president of the Transport Project, where he talks about the process of rebranding an organization, explains what a sustainability solutionist is, and why he thinks now is a great opportunity for natural gas. He also explains the different types of feedstocks for renewable natural gas, the economics of the fuel, and clears up some of the misconceptions. Hello and welcome to this episode of my podcast series. I have with me Dan Gage. He's the president at the Transport Project, and I think this is the first time I've ever done this live where we're at the same place. So here's a first for you, Dan.
Oh, live, like side by side. That's great. I'm honored.
Yeah, almost always we do it virtually, where we do it over Zoom, and we're not in the same spot. So this is kind of fun. Bear with us, everybody. This is called Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends. So Dan, I'm not going to let you off the hook. We have to figure out how we met and became friends. You got any recollections or ideas?
Gosh, Mike, I gotta remember that. You want me to tell the real story, or that spooky night I was hitchhiking across Big Sky Country and you pulled up in your RV to pick me up and save me from the rain?
Yeah, that's how I remember it. That's how I remember it.
No, I'm not even sure if I can remember the date because you're a road warrior. I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of folks that invite me to come and speak and present and educate folks on RNG and natural gas trucking. So it must have been at an event.
Yeah, it probably was. And you pass people in life and you talk to them and so forth. But I think when I would say that we turned from maybe just knowing each other to kind of friends is I did come to your event in Nashville about 2 years ago.
Right.
And I don't think I spoke, but I was there, and I think we spent some time, and I learned about the organization and so forth. That was when you were going through the rebranding or renaming, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, and we were NGV America for 30 plus years, right? And thanks for bringing that. Last year, we rebranded to the Transport Project. A lot of our members are doing more and more in the hydrogen space. So we wanted to reflect that, our members and our mission is to enhance and advocate for and promote gaseous fuels, right? So LNG, CNG, right? Conventional, but also RNG and hydrogen. So we're in that space. And I've been in this position now since the fall of 2017. And I know, NACFE was on my radar early on because of all the cool stuff that you do. And of course we are working with a couple of our members to help sponsor and promote this year's Run on Less show, which we're really, really excited about.
Yeah. So about 2017, before that, we were solely working on efficiency.
Right.
So it was all about less gallons to move more freight. And about 2017 is when we got into what we called emerging technologies, or kind of the alternative fuels world. So that would have been kind of that sort of timing. I went to the Ohio State University. I had a kick out of the Transport Project.
That was a lot of debate, mind you.
Well,
There probably was a month of conversation to do we keep the article in front of Transporter?
Yeah. So tell me. I mean, rebranding's hard.
Yeah.
We got Cracker Barrel going through what they're going through, and everything from organizations changing from Kentucky Fried Chicken to KFC because they didn't want to say the word fried during a period of time. I mean, branding is really, really difficult. So what spurred you to do it? And then tell us a little about the process.
I'll be honest with you. We would, and again, well, I'll say this. A lot has changed in the outlook on what alternative fuels are and the regulatory environment in the last year, right? Like night and day. But, I can remember going into offices and state legislators in the 2018s, 2019s, and there were some that did not want to talk to us because of the word natural gas, or the words natural gas in our name. And they didn't quite understand what we were talking about. They assumed we were shrills for oil and gas polluters, whatever, fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm.
And so we needed a name that reflected who we were, who we represented. And we're really proud. We represent close to 200 member organizations. They're everything from fleets to OEMs to engine makers to fuel producers, fuel marketers, anyone in the natural gas or the gaseous fuel.
Before you go any further, who sparked this? Was it you? Was it the members? Was it something else? Or did it all just kind of...
It was I think it was building for some time. We would go in to see folks and they didn't want to talk to us in natural gas or, we have members that are doing some really, really neat stuff in hydrogen. And it was just a natural progression from their work on cylinders, their work on fuel
Got it.
injectors, right? Like our members have worked for years with California Transit. So they were on the bleeding edge of natural gas decades ago. And now they're on that bleeding edge of hydrogen. And so we just wanted a name that reflected that. And so, you know, my background was in political communications and PR and sort of that marketing. So I really dug into it and really enjoyed like the process. But it is a process, right? And as you socialize, I think it took about 18 months from start to finish. And we're fortunate we have, such great companies that have marketing teams on them. So I didn't have to go out and spend, six figures for some consultant to come in, but we worked with our existing vendors and contractors that help us on stuff we do today and some of those smart branding people from some of our member companies, and they help us come up with this. But the idea is that we're all in this together. We're sustainability. I like to say we're sustainability solutionists. We're not one, you're not anti this or just pro that. And we want to be part of the solution. And so we think that the transport project and our new logo and color scheme sort of reflects that, right? That
Yeah,
we
from
want to be part of the solution.
Yeah, from my chair, I think you did it really well. I think
Thanks.
sometimes people go through this branding and they want to cut off the old brand and everything. You still said, this is the transport project, formerly the natural gas
NGVA,
vehicle.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think you did a nice job of that and got through it quickly rather than just let, they go on and on. So, you've always struck me as a passionate and competent leader of this group, but what got you here? I mean, what a couple of things, pointed to a couple things in your career that aligned for you to be doing this right now, and then we'll get into what that is.
Oh god, I mean, I worked for years. I fell into politics. I was going to take a year off between college and law school, like every other poli sci major, and I never thought I'd be in politics. I just was just in sort of an interest government. And anyway, I worked in government for at the local, federal, state level for about 20 years, and my boss retired. I had moved my family down to DC as a chief of staff, and then he retired. And so I went downtown and I did some contract lobbying and realized pretty quickly I was not made to be on this earth to do contract lobbying. That's when, obviously you work for different clients. I got this opportunity to go to the American Academy of Pediatrics and work on kids' health, and I loved it. I loved the cause. And that just sort of morphed into I got recruited to go join the light duty automakers, and was doing some really, really neat stuff on privacy and data and safety with them. And then this job sort of came up, and it was a unique challenge to sort of lead a team again, a smaller team, and a mission. We were fighting. I think the winds have changed, but we were fighting some pretty strong headwinds there for a while in that electrify everything, and it's got to be electric or it's not a future technology. And I like the idea of getting a small band of brothers together, so to speak, and fight the power, right? Fight the man. But we're an established technology in a sense, but we're also sort of pushing at those edges, and we've got a future opportunity too that gives me a
So
really
I mean, can I say the stars have aligned? You got the engine now. You
yeah.
got we have now a renewable natural gas
Mhm.
that makes this a better play really for a broader audience. And then the regulatory piece. Are we at a real place here? I've seen you on stage leading panels, talking yourself. It feels like this is a real moment.
I feel like we have a unique opportunity, right? Sort of that perfect storm, so to speak, right? The regulatory environment has changed. I hope it doesn't swing too far because then, then you lose, you have that concern it's going to just swing right back farther the other way. I'd like to see, I think we are a great compromise right now solution, right? The folks on the far left might not care for us so much, or the far right, but right in the middle, like it's affordable, it's scalable, it's here. Like you said, we've got this 15-liter engine, but I also see that we're holding our own and maybe even making some headway in what I used to call the three T's, right? So trucks are one, and the 15-liter addresses that, but transit and trash. I mean, almost two-thirds of all refuse builds still are natural gas. And when we look at transit, there have been a lot of transit agencies that have been able to successfully incorporate in some electric technology. But for the workhorse and the range or maybe weather conditions, it doesn't quite work.
Mhm.
And so they're going back and reinvesting in some of that natural gas technology, not giving up the zero emission, the complete zero emission, right? The ZEV focus, but they're sort of waiting because it's going to take a little bit for electric or needs to be or hydrogen to become more affordable.
Yeah. So, we've studied natural gas as a fuel and so forth. And I think we're interested and believe the same that we have a real opportunity here. But I got a couple questions for you. So, help me with and us with renewable natural gas. So, my first question is, I see that there's different kinds or there's different feedstocks, and a lot of people point to dairy as the like first choice or one that's got a low carbon intensity and so forth. Kind of walk us through what is dairy RNG and how does that compare to things like wastewater or landfills or other forms?
Right. So, landfills obviously they're the easier one to sort of grab right now because most landfills, in essence, a landfill is just a big digester anyway, right? And so landfill gas tends to be a carbon intensity value of it's positive. So it could be anywhere like 50 to 60 CI.
Mhm.
When you get into wastewater, that gets closer to zero. Food source like food waste is about zero. But then when you get into the ag waste, that's really where you're taking some really methane producing operations. And by capturing that gas that would just damage the environment, and different ag waste scores differently. Like you mentioned dairy, that can be one of the most carbon intensive manures, right? So you could get scores of up to negative 400, 500, 600.
Wow.
You've got swine waste, which comes in a little bit higher than that, all right? And then there's chicken, poultry as well. That's a very dry waste. So it's a little harder to digest, and so therefore you don't have that great negative carbon intensity. But if you look at like the key to that is not just looking at what the one pathway or the one production source is. You got to look at what that mix is. And last year in California, and I quote California because they do a terrific job at CARB of tracking and scoring all of those pathways. If you look at what that bio CNG mix was last year in 2024 in California, it was negative 194. So what that means is if you're a fleet running on natural gas and on dispensed gas from California, 99% of all natural gas motor fuel in California dispensed last year was renewable. If you're running on bio CNG in California, you're running carbon negative today with an ICE engine.
Right. So some's better than others, but all of it's better than petroleum natural gas.
Well,
What do you call it? Conventional natural gas?
conventional or geologic, but so I think people have to understand too. The transition to RNG has been so quick in the last 4 or 5 years. Last year, nationwide, 86% of all natural gas motor fuel dispense was from a renewable source. So 80% is
Wow.
RNG. We're not running conventional natural gas on road. And that's because of the federal, the EPA's RVO, Renewable Fuel Standard Program. It's because of LCFS or Clean Fuel Standards. Those RNG producers, folks that are capturing that gas or harvesting that gas, if they use it or find an off taker, an end user that's on road transportation, they monetize the value of that gas so much more.
Yeah. So, I don't know that you've said it, but I've said it. It's a double benefit here. We're taking the methane out of the air, which is bad for our environment, and we're using it in a fuel that displaces petroleum, natural gas, or, so it's kind of a big double benefit.
It's the perfect circular economy, right? We're taking a waste liability and making it a green energy asset. And if you just use one of our largest members and one of the largest natural gas fleets in the United States is Waste Management, right? Those trucks are literally running on the
Yeah.
trash that they pick up.
Yeah.
And it's a great story.
Yeah. So along those, last question maybe on this line is, when do we run out? I said that to somebody once and they go, well, Mike, we're always going to creating waste, and I think, even on recent panels, they were talking about, we got, as long as we eat, pork and beef and so forth. We're going to have cannibals that create this waste. So, have you done a calculation on that? I mean, at what point do we kind of run out? And at that point, do we stop using natural gas, or do we cap natural gas trucks at that level, or do we start using, the compressed natural gas, or what happens then, and how much of a run way do we have here?
Yeah. So what did I mention? I started in 2017. So it's been what, 7, 8 years. When I started, that was always the argument that we were using figures of how much conventional natural gas. We had like 99 years supply of American produced gas. And then with the renewable natural gas, folks always said, well, there'll never be enough to supply what we need. And the irony in that is now that we're at a point where, we're 86% renewable, the RNG production folks are getting a little nervous saying we need to create more demand on the on-road side. And that's what we're trying to do, right, with the 15 liter and others. I don't think it's a question of is there going to be enough? I think the question is, are the economics there to continue this huge push that we've seen to harvest that methane? And I think for as you mentioned, for carbon reduction, for sustainability purposes, we have to capture methane. We should be capturing methane because it is a pollutant in essence, right? It's damaging the environment. Although it's much short-lived compared to other pollutants, we should be capturing that methane. The beauty of it here is that every single U.S. state has the ability to be an RNG producer. They're not all RNG producers yet. I don't believe there's a facility in every state, but there's that opportunity. And
Because waste is everywhere.
Waste is everywhere, right? And I think 32, 33 U.S. states are conventional natural gas producers. But in the case of RNG, it can be produced anywhere. It can be deployed anywhere. And I think that one of the common misconceptions that we were talking about today with some groups here is I think if folks think, well, I'm not next to a dairy farm, so I don't have access to it, or the landfill down the street doesn't capture it or put it into this. You don't need to be next door. It's not a closed loop system. It's similar to, and I think the analogy was used today, you put $100 in the bank, in your bank in your hometown, but while you're on vacation, you go to an ATM and get another 100 out. It's a checks and balances system, right? That those molecules go into the system. A methane molecule, whether it's produced by conventional gas or conventional methane or renewable, it's the same molecule. And so it's in that.
That question that you were talking about, it's like a hypocritical kind of question. If you believe we're going to have multiple solutions in road trucks, and then it's kind of hypocritical to ask, do you have enough fuel for any one to do it all? I think we burn like 45 billion gallons of diesel in commercial trucking, or some number like that. It won't all be replaced by natural gas. Some will be electric, some will be biofuel, some will be hydrogen, some will be natural gas. So we really don't need it all. And that sort of balance of what percent of share of these different technologies over time will work itself out.
And my argument is, don't worry about that. With availability, production, availability. I mean, that was the issue. How do I get it? It's available, 86%, right, last year.
Yeah.
And our members made a commitment several years ago that it was our fuel marketers and retailers. They made a commitment that 80% of all their fuel dispensed by 2030 would be renewable. We met that last year. We're at 86, right? So we're there.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question we still get that question about availability. Is there going to be enough? But I would say to some of those folks who ask it, they're also very, they might not be pro natural gas, but they're very pro electric. I would argue the same thing. I think that's the bigger challenge in this rush to electrification is the amount of electricity in terms of capacity and that transmission capacity to get it where we need it, to those parts of town where you might have 2, 3, a UPS, waste management, a FedEx, facilities that are needing that amount of electricity. That's a bigger challenge right now than we have than is there going to be enough?
Sure. So let's talk. You brought up Run on Less earlier. We have 3 natural gas trucks, 3 fleets, and
Super excited about that.
Yeah. So what about it are you excited about, and why should other people besides us pay attention to it?
Well, for us, I can stand at the top of a stage like I did today and bang a pot or go talk to anyone. I am obviously a biased participant in all this. And I think the more we have independent third party folks that are studying all the issues, right? Lay it all out there. And I love how you guys have put this together this year where all that data, and maybe you have in the past and I haven't paid close enough attention, but all that data is going to be coming in from 12, is it 13 fleets?
It's 13 fleets.
13 fleets. 13 fleets over the course of, 2 weeks. And it's side by side comparison, right? Like, and it's not my fingerprints on it. It's a independent third party group that's just trying to advance a cause, right? And so if everyone we look at the duty cycles and everything's transparent, and we'll see how natural gas stacks up
Yeah, sure.
against other options. And there might be duty cycles where biodiesel is better or electric is better. But I can tell you today, I know in my heart that there are multiple duty cycles where no one's going to beat the sustainability, the affordability, the scalability of RNG.
Yeah, and you'll, we will even publish a data. I mean, I'm sure you got geeky people within the transport project and definitely at your major members.
Sure.
So, during October sometime, the data collection will be September 8th through the 25th. And then in October, we'll be, publishing a data set so people can go, look at this, look at that, and make some conclusions for themselves. So, we're running out of time, Dan. I mean, what's some, you've made, the point around scalability and affordability and sustainability, but what's something different that you want the U.S. trucking world to know about what you're working on and that maybe isn't quite so obvious?
Well, change is hard. It's always hard. There are some of us. I'm not a technocrat. I have a cousin who is a technologist, and he was a kid taking apart all my electronics when he'd come visit, and then there'd always be a couple pieces missing. But he's so brilliant on that side of things,
A
and
couple pieces missing and it still worked.
he was. Of course, somehow, but he was the first guy in line for a Tesla, and I know it's really tough when you're running a fleet and you've got to keep trucks on the road and you've got to keep people employed and you've got certain fixed costs. It's really hard to make those leaps. You want to minimize your risk. You want to know things are going to work, and I think there's always a hesitancy and there are folks who tried natural gas 10, 15 years ago. It didn't quite work right, or they didn't quite have the support they needed. The message I want to share with them is there are groups like us, Transport Project, some of our members that will help you through this step. Everything, we've figured it out. We've got this. We have fleets, WM, UPS, PepsiCo, they have figured out the secret sauce, and those members are willing to help us, right? Rising tide lifts all boats. We can work with you to make sure you're doing it safely, effectively, best practices. It doesn't have to be scary. And the beautiful part about natural gas is that some of the biggest OEMs and engine makers, the players, these are legacy entities, right? That are doing, so when you buy a Cummins 15-liter engine, they've got 70,000 of them, I think, sold and running in China right now. They've learned from that. It's a company with a history, with a product, with a proven known quantity. It's not going away. Natural gas 20 years ago, we were the shiny penny. We were the new thing that people were trying. We have been through the ringer and we've got a product now that works. And it's affordable. It's still certainly scary to take that leap, but there are a lot of people who want to take that leap with you.
Yeah, very good, Dan. Thank you for joining us. This has been really interesting, and I'm glad we did it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Freight Efficiency with NACV's Mike Roth and Friends.